She always had a twinkle in her eye. If you saw a photo, you see dark brown eyes until you look up close, and her eyes were actually very amber with gold. And she would just give you a big smile and you couldn't help but smile. She was everybody's friend.
Look at his precious face. Yes, I know you like to attack my face.
Michaela's younger sister, Tabitha, was the only other sibling still living under the same roof.
I'll give you a hug.
Oh, God, no, you're good. Ow! No,
They had a special understanding for each other, for better or for worse.
And everyone thinks I'm a weakling.
Now, some sisters are not going to get along, and some are going to be super close. How about you two?
We were super close. I mean, we never really apologized to each other.
What does that mean?
Well, we would just kind of make up and just pretend like nothing ever happened. But as we got older, we started buying each other iced coffee as an apology because it was just easier and we both liked the iced coffee. She liked French vanilla, I liked caramel.
How often did you have to buy each other iced coffee?
It was about 4 or 5 times a week.
I love you. No, you don't. Don't kiss me. No! Let me kiss you first, then.
When Michaela and her family moved to St. Johnsville 15 years earlier, they embraced their adopted home. Now, every community has its own personality. St. Johnsville, just if you describe it as a town, someone who's never been here, what are they going to find?
They're going to find values. Stay honest, stay true, be nice. If you see someone and they need help, help them.
In St. Johnsville, Samantha also found a good man and father to her kids. By 2018, she was married to Kevin and running a bustling hair salon from her house near the town center. Michaela was following in her mother's footsteps, preparing to attend beauty school while working nights at Stewart's, a local convenience store. Life was good, but their lives had also been touched by tragedy. Now your oldest daughter, Kimberly, you had lost.
Yes.
What caused her death?
She was in the hospital for about a week and she passed away from cardiac arrhythmia.
The family was still grieving on the afternoon of September 24th, when Michaela stopped by Samantha's salon just before walking the few blocks to her job.
She came in to tell me she was leaving for work and my heart hit my stomach and I didn't know why. And I stopped what I was doing and I told her, I was like, back it up, back it up. And she goes, what'd I do? I was like, nothing. I love you. And she goes, I know, I love you too, Mama. I'll see you later. Just something didn't feel right that day, and I didn't know what it was.
Unlike Michaela, Samantha wasn't a night owl, but this night was different. Try as she might, she couldn't sleep at all, waiting for Michaela to return from work.
And I didn't hear from her, so I assumed that she was getting a ride. And I was laying in bed and I heard a car door. And I thought, oh, she's home, okay. Everything's all right.
And then you fell asleep.
Mm-hmm.
The next morning.
Still felt off. It's coming up on 12, she's not awake yet, does she have to go to work? And after a few times of knocking and calling her name, I opened the door. And she wasn't there.
I mean, is that alarm bells or is that she must have gone up and gone out?
That was alarm bells. I texted her and I wasn't hearing anything. I really started to get worried.
Samantha was friendly with just about everyone in town, including the St. Johnsville police chief, who also knew Michaela.
I called the police chief and she agreed it was not in her character to do something like this. She wasn't posting on social media. She's always posting on social media, always. She always had her phone in her hand. And she said, absolutely go report her missing.
What do you remember about the missing persons report you filed?
I gave them a description, told them where she worked, where we lived, the last time we saw her and had any contact with her. I'm trying to email them a photo of her, and I was shaking so bad I couldn't hold my phone.
Samantha tried hard to stay calm. She told the police she heard Michaela was last seen by a coworker leaving Stewart's the previous night. She also explained that her daughter had been dating a young man named Devin Sargent. Devin Sargent, boyfriend, kind of boyfriend? I don't want to mischaracterize the relationship.
On and off.
On and off. Now, any boyfriend is always going to be looked at whenever someone is missing. How is that fitting into the picture here?
I had so many thoughts going through my mind. Nobody's out of the question.
And what, were they fully in at the time in a relationship? Was it breaking up? Where would you put them?
She was trying to break up.
And how was he handling that, from what you knew?
When I logged into her messenger, it just did not look good from what he had said to her.
A couple days before she disappeared, when she broke up with him, he told her that if he couldn't have her, nobody could.
Police tried to reach Devin Sargent and also pinged Michaela's cell phone. It was still powered on a couple miles north of town, but in rural areas, cell tower triangulation isn't always accurate. So when officers got there, they found nothing and nobody. But the small-town police department still wanted to exhaust every avenue before state troopers like Kevin Noto got involved.
St. Johnsville had taken the initial report. To their credit, they did a lot in the time that they had.
What about video surveillance? You know, we're talking 2018. This happens at least near a town center. Any paths that took you down?
So there was surveillance footage at the store, which was helpful because that gave us a lot of information to work with. We saw that she had a very distinct handbag that she had with her. She was wearing glasses. We saw that she was wearing her work outfit when she left, so we were able to account for what time she actually left the store, what general direction she left, and we could also see that she was using her phone at the time when she left.
When local officers couldn't find Michaela or talk to her boyfriend, state police investigator Donald Klingbeil was sent there to assist. So what was the first assignment that you were given when you got involved in this case?
I got a call from my boss on September 26th to come down. He gave me a brief idea of what St. Johnsville had at the moment. It appeared at that point the best avenue to take was to interview her boyfriend.
That same evening, Devin Sargent was finally located, and he agreed to come in to answer questions. Explain that interview to me about what information he gave based on the questions he was asked.
We began the interview, just basic, getting to know him, trying to understand what his relationship with Michaela is.
Devin denied ever telling Michaela that if he couldn't have her, nobody could. And he told police about the last time he heard her voice.
He said that he was at Stewart's earlier that day. He had went there to get coffee. Later, he did tell us that he did speak to her on the phone and that she was walking home. He said that, she told him to hang on a second and he could hear a man's voice. And then she said that she had to go, and that was the last he spoke to her. He didn't seem concerned, overly concerned.
So here you have a town that is really, everyone is out there trying to find this young girl, and the person who's in the relationship with her doesn't seem that concerned. Did that heighten the interest of investigators?
Devin was certainly a person of interest.
After interviewing Michaela MacVilla's on-again, off-again boyfriend, Devin Sargent, investigators were still suspicious.
We requested DNA from him, which he submitted. His father gave us consent to search their residence, where we did find some of Michaela's belongings, but she stayed there frequently. Specifically, I think we found a pair of sandals and just some random clothing items, which wasn't out of the norm.
Nothing that you were putting on her the night she disappeared?
Correct. At one point, he took a polygraph, which he passed. So we started focusing our efforts in other areas.
That's when the state police were brought in to bolster the investigation and help coordinate expanded searches. So there's lots of moving parts happening in real time, and at the same time, most importantly, Michaela has not been found. You also had a lot of various agencies that were working. Talk to me about the challenges of working at the same time in conjunction with one another.
So we had the St. Johnsville Police Department, and you had the state police that handled basically the criminal investigation. We had state corrections recruits that came out to assist with some of the searches. With all the different moving parts and all the different agencies, I think it went really, really well.
That focus yielded results the very next day, when state troopers finally pinpointed Michaela's most prized possession a couple miles north of town.
We were able to actually track Michaela's cell phone through the streets here of St. Johnsville to up on Mill Road, where Michaela's phone stops. And ultimately, we had located Michaela's phone on the side of the road. Somebody threw it out the window, and specifically because of the side of the road it was found on, it would appear that the driver threw it out the window.
So as an investigator, you know that you're looking for a young 21-year-old, and now her phone is found.
Yes.
What did that signify to you?
We have a missing person, but we definitely have something criminal here.
The discovery was a disturbing turn of events for Michaela's mother. Do you remember what went through your mind when you got the news that they had found her phone, but not her?
At one point, I'd asked the investigator from the state police, I said, at what point does this go from search and rescue to recovery? And at that point, I was just numb to everything. And he said, don't give up hope. But you just know.
And yet, the phone yielded many clues. It confirmed that Devin Sargent was the last person who spoke to Michaela, but shortly after that, there was another entry on the call log. So after she speaks to Devin Sargent, she makes another call.
Yes. There had been an attempted call that was made from the phone to a 315 area code number, and that phone never actually connected to the tower.
Did it come up to any name, or was it just this different area code?
It was a different area code. It wasn't one that the family was familiar with, so it was a number that we had to try to figure out who that belonged to.
Investigators wondered if that call had something to do with what Devin Sargent had told them. And so did Fulton County District Attorney Chad Brown. Now, if I'm not mistaken, Devin confirmed that they had been talking not soon before she disappeared.
Yeah, he was on the phone with her as she was walking home from work. He heard her say, "Hold on a second," to him, and then he heard some mail in the background. And this is the last communication that he had with her.
Was he able to give anything specific about what he heard other than a male's voice?
It was mainly what Michaela had said, just the "hold on a second, yeah, hey, how you doing?" Like she was talking to somebody that she kind of knew. And then she told him, "I'll call you back," and hung up on him.
Investigators wanted to speak to the owner of the 315 phone number, face to face, but tracking them down was no easy task. Where did that other phone number lead you, or what did you do with that number?
Well, we subpoenaed the records to see who it was registered to, and it came back to Kelly Solak, who lives just outside the village here.
Hey, do you know Michaela?
No.
You don't know who she is?
No.
You sure?
I'm sure.
Okay, because you were the last person she called.
Michaela, the girl that's missing?
Yeah.
You know her? No.
You ever had a 315 phone?
No.
That's the phone number that's coming back to you, ma'am.
No, I wish I knew the girl, and I wish I knew where she was. I would help you guys, you know, and help her get home.
All right, sorry to bother you guys.
Investigators determined that Kelly Solak had nothing to do with Michaela's disappearance. So you have a female who's coming back to that number registered, who says she doesn't know Michaela, doesn't know anyone, and then a further deep dive, if you will, into that phone.
Yes. We looked into that phone number some more to see if there had been any history.
And that expanded look into that 315 phone number revealed some unusual call activity just hours after Michaela went missing.
We saw that there was a series of 911 calls that were made from that number during the early morning hours of September 25th. So this would be the morning right after Michaela would have left work.
Circle County 911.
Hi, can I have a phone county sheriff, please?
Yeah.
There was a male caller, and he was calling in that there were subjects on his property.
I got a bunch of people outside my house with guns and dogs.
You don't have any idea who it could be?
Well, I've had a problem with the Hells Angels and the club, so I go to look out the window, they're pointing guns at me, so.
After investigators listened to the recordings, they determined the caller was actually the brother of the woman who they had questioned.
What is your name?
Daniel Nellis.
All right, I got somebody on the way out there.
So did police respond to that call? Did they take a report?
They did respond. 2 officers went out there. When they got there, they met Dan Nellis at the door to his house, and he told them what was going on. They said, "There's nobody here," and he said, "Well, they were all around here." 2 deputies that walked around and followed him, and they couldn't find anything, no evidence of anything that he was talking about. No motorcycles, no other vehicles, just nothing at all.
It's bizarre.
It was very bizarre.
So they'd take a report and leave?
They took his information and they left, yeah.
Did the name Daniel Nellis mean anything to you or other investigators when you first learned that that was the person that placed those 911 calls?
I wasn't familiar with him, but there were other investigators who were. He had been a member of various outlaw motorcycle gangs over the course of years. From what we learned, he had been thrown out of those for having issues with fellow members. He had a prior felony conviction, which precluded him from possessing any firearms in New York State.
3 days after Michaela's disappearance, state police investigators paid Nellis another visit. And this time, authorities were looking for the missing girl.
2 investigators go out to interview him to see what information he may have. When they do, he says that he vaguely knows Michaela from her work at the convenience store.
He had very weird affect when he would talk to the police in general, but this time it was a little bit more abnormal.
How so?
It just matter of fact about things, and he brought things up that they weren't talking about. He brought up the missing girl. They didn't bring that up initially.
That came from him, not her.
Yeah, they came and said, "We're here because your number came up, and it came up as the last known call on a case." And he goes, yeah, something about the missing girl. And they said, yes, that's what it's about. And then he volunteered that he knew of her, that he had spoken to her at Stewart's.
He would see her there on occasion, but he said that the last time that he ever had any contact with her was several weeks prior when he encountered her. She was on the roadside upset, and he stopped to talk to her, and she indicated that she was upset because her sister had recently passed away.
So you have a call made from Michaela's phone to this number to a guy who said he doesn't really know her, but in either event has not even seen or spoken to her in weeks.
Correct. The fact that there was this call that had been attempted to his phone was certainly something that we wanted to try to figure out what that was about. And it was as a result of that we started issuing some search warrants for his cell phone records to see what we could find from there.
After police spoke with Daniel Nellis, the people of St. Johnsville held a candlelight vigil for Michaela. It was the community's way to show support for Samantha and her family.
They were trying to comfort us any way that they could and reassure us that she would be found.
Now you've talked about those days as a bit of a blur.
Yeah.
Which I can only imagine. What is pushing you each one of those days?
Just wanting my daughter back. I had never expected so much support. They all just rallied together, the entire St. Johnsville community.
The vigil was a poignant tribute, but for investigators, it was also a moment to observe, and it was impossible to ignore the odd behavior of one person in particular. There was also some talk about the behavior of her ex-boyfriend, Devin, at that vigil. What was that?
He had been kicking over some candles.
And what does everyone make of that?
It was certainly not behavior you would expect from somebody whose girlfriend was missing.
While police questioned Devin Sargent's attitude, so far his story had checked out.
I interviewed him myself with other investigators probably 3 times throughout the course.
The more you looked into Devin Sargent, what did you ultimately determine?
We started focusing our efforts in other areas.
So we had found her phone, and from that, our computer crime specialists were able to do a forensic examination of the phone, and they found that her phone had connected to the Wi-Fi at her house. And investigator Klingbeil went out and actually checked the distance to see how far away that would have put her, and he was able to find that the phone would have connected within 400 feet of her house to the Wi-Fi signal. So we knew that she had gotten at least that close to her house.
Investigators noticed Michaela's house had a security camera facing the street. They asked Samantha if they could review the footage.
They were able to break that down and figure out the time frame, and it was after midnight. And then they see her on this camera. You can see that she's on the phone. Looks like she was on with a call. When a silver car pulls up, she actually threw a cigarette out, if I remember right, and then approaches the car, and then she again goes to her cell phone. And then a few seconds later, she gets into the car, and then she rides away.
From what you could see, again, within these moments of footage, did she seem to be in trouble from the way that she acted on that video?
There, no distress. It seemed like she either knew the person or the person was friendly.
Whether that person was a friend or a stranger, whoever was behind the wheel of that car held all the answers. One day after investigators spoke with Daniel Nellis, authorities executed a search warrant of his property in Fulton County. Anything uncovered or recovered at his residence?
There were several rifles that were located. And then there were a number of expended bullets that had been fired throughout different places in the residence. So our forensic unit went through and actually extracted the bullet fragments from these different locations for later testing at the lab.
Because of a prior felony, Daniel Nellis was arrested for weapons possession. When you picked him up that day, did he seem concerned or anything that at least led you down one path or another?
I did try to make small talk with him to build some sort of rapport. He never asked what was going on or why we pulled him out of his house. We attempted to interview Dan, and Dan essentially invoked his Miranda rights and didn't want to talk to us.
With Nellis not talking, investigators focused on what else they could find. At the time that the search warrant's executed, is there anything connecting Michaela at that time to the residence?
One of the things that he also had at the residence was a surveillance system.
Unfortunately, it only contained the last few days of footage irrelevant to the case. But after a deep forensic analysis, deleted material was recovered. And that footage was a breakthrough.
Do you have my phone?
You could see them walking from his vehicle up towards the front door of the residence. And you can hear on the audio her asking him if he has her phone.
Do you have my phone or?
Huh?
Do you have my phone?
Yeah.
And he says yes, he does.
Yeah.
What are investigators thinking as you're now watching? You now see the missing young woman walking into this home.
It seemed like she was there on her own accord, but it was concerning to us that she's asking about her phone and he's telling her that he has it when we know at that point in time that the phone has already been discarded.
Which also makes me wonder, why did he even have it? Did he take it from her? For this young woman who's connected to her phone, and yet she's asking him if he had her phone.
Right.
What else did the footage show?
Later, the following morning, the one deputy arrived. That was as a response to the 911 calls that had been made. And then just before 12 noon, there's footage of Michaela and Dan Ellis leaving the house.
And now, about 5 hours later, you see both of them exiting the residence.
Yes.
And what, if anything, is surmised from investigators at that point? I mean, what are you able to actually see?
It's a very short clip, and there's no communication between the two of them. One of the things we do see is that she has that multicolored handbag that she had when she left the store.
So now you have Dan Ellis denying that he's been with her. You have her in the footage, but you still don't have Michaela.
Right.
When they found that footage, investigators and family still held out hope that Michaela was alive. But their hopes were dashed later that same day when an urgent call came into 911.
Fulton County Sheriff's Office, Maury.
Oh my God, Fulton County. Hold on, Larry. This is Herkimer County. What's going on? Okay, I have Larry Thompson on the line. He's found a deceased female. Okay? The girl that's missing. It looks like they tore her pants off and everything. Oh my God, oh my God. It's right where the power line goes across Cranesbush Road.
So after you got that notification, what did you do?
I responded to this access road. The body was reported down here about a half mile.
When you got out here, were you able to interview the landowner who had made that 911 call?
I was. One of the first things I did was interview him to get an idea exactly what was down here. Well, he said he was coming down the road, this access road here. He passed this area just up a little ways, and as he drove by, he happened to notice that the grass was matted down in that area. He had passed it, so he had backed up, and when he backed up, he could see the matted area and what he believed was a female. And he made a 911 call.
What did they actually find when they found her laying in the brush?
She was, in fact, face down, partially clothed. They found her glasses. She had a bracelet on.
So the obvious thing you want to know first is who is the young woman who's lying here? What were any identifiers that led you to think at least who you thought you'd found?
So one of the main identifiers is she had a tattoo. Michaela had a tattoo inside of her left forearm. It was a heart with the infinity symbol woven through it. She was wearing the same clothing that was described to us the night she went missing.
So you didn't have an official identification, but all signs pointed to
Yes.
that you had found her.
Yes.
Investigator Klingbeil drove to Samantha's house to deliver the news. no parent ever wants to hear. Do you remember what went through your mind when you got the news?
There's a whole blank space in my memory. I remember bits and pieces, because the next thing I know, there were people standing in my dining room. To tell me that they found a body. That was the last time I ever yelled. It's an uncontrollable sound that you make. You don't know where it's coming from. You don't know how to stop it.
Because at that point you knew.
Yeah.
I heard her scream. It was like someone had shot her. I remember my whole world falling apart, and I didn't know how to put it back together again. It was hard, because I felt like it was my fault, because I knew something was off, but I didn't do anything. I kind of just let it go, and I feel like it's my fault.
It's not your fault.
Yeah, I know.
I think it's such a common feeling to feel that, because that's a feeling you had that something happened, but it has nothing to do with you, other than the pain of losing her. Her autopsy revealed that Michaela died from a single gunshot wound to the back of the head. But investigators were still looking for more answers. Without seeing it on video or hearing it from a killer themselves, there's really never any definitive answer of why. But here you have at least what looks like she's not in distress initially, and then you know she is found with a bullet in her head. And what happens between his home and where she's left in the brush?
You know, we started canvassing that area for video footage. In this specific case, there was a house up the road on Kringsbush, and it still did have video that turned out to be very important to the case.
What did it show?
So what it showed was the Pontiac G6 that Dan Nellis drives was seen going southbound at 12:20 on September 25th, and then returning northbound at 12:25 on the 25th.
I mean, for something so horrific to happen in just a number of minutes, what do you think could have led them to point A to point B?
I wish I knew.
While so much was still unclear, investigators found a remarkable piece of evidence that would leave nothing to the imagination. A Fitbit health monitor Michaela was wearing when she died. When investigators downloaded the device's data, they realized they had a precise record of Michaela's final moments of life. And when all these pieces came together, what picture was now painted for you?
The Fitbit shows me that there was a really serious struggle that had occurred, and that she was fighting for her life. You can see the heart rate go up, and then you see it increase exponentially. And then all of a sudden you just see it precipitously drop. And then it just flatlines.
So it was the Fitbit that really gave you the answer of exactly when she died.
Yeah, I tell people, when you see that and you see the heart rate, that's the point that you see somebody die. That was really hard.
I looked at that and I felt that I had this incredibly vivid, horrible snapshot of her last minutes that we don't often have. We know they happened, we talk about them happening, but you actually have it in front of you that you cannot get away from that.
Yeah, it was overwhelming to see that.
On Thursday, November 15th, Daniel Nellis was indicted for second-degree murder. The case against Nellis appeared strong, but it was largely circumstantial, and not everything added up. This is a case that You have evidence coming at you every which way and then some, but there's still these pieces that unfortunately may always remain blank. Prepping your case for the trial, what did you look as the challenges that you faced?
They were a lot.
In June 2019, Fulton County District Attorney Chad Brown prepared for one of the biggest cases of his career, the prosecution of Daniel Nellis for the murder of Michaela MacVilla. The trial was set in this historic courthouse in Johnstown, New York. So Chad, you tried Daniel Nellis in this courtroom, but it also has some pretty amazing history itself.
Yes, this is one of the oldest usable courtrooms in the state of New York and in the country.
This time capsule from the Revolutionary War era was the setting for a case that would delve deep into digital forensics. So what was the evidence that you conveyed through this monitor?
So what we're showing here is the cell phone of Daniel Nellis as it moves through the area of Kingsbush Road, which is right near where Michaela's body was found, and you can see the time frames are stamped on there. It's about a 20-30 second spread for 3 hits on 3 different towers. And so then as we go along, if you zoom in, you can see where it lays right over the area that Michaela's body was found.
And that data lined up perfectly with the window of time when Nellis's car was captured, coming and then going on Kingsbush Road. Then another piece of video further incriminated Nellis. It documented him returning home after the killing, holding one of Michaela's belongings.
When Michaela went missing, one of the things that her mother described for us was this very multicolored, distinct purse. When we got the archive videos at Dan Nellis's residence, one of the things that we got was a clip that showed him coming back at 2:59 on that afternoon. And when he came in the crux of his arm, we have this little neon green, orange colors, and those are distinct because they're very similar to the colors. Yes, exactly right. They were very consistent with what we were looking for, and so we were showing the jury, look, you can't make this up.
How many witnesses in total did you have testify during the trial?
I believe I had 55 witnesses.
And how many pieces of evidence?
Over 750. I think the final number was in the 770 range.
And you had so much evidence, but I have to come back to the piece that we've talked about before, which is that Fitbit evidence. When I think about whether it's the jurors or whoever is sitting out here in the gallery, when you introduced that evidence, where it was an actual vivid snapshot of the last minutes, horrific minutes of Michaela's life, what was the reaction in the courtroom when you presented that?
I felt at that point, I could see the jurors just kind of realize what I had already realized back when I received it. They realized this is this woman's last breath. And so they were just able to see this and say, my goodness, this poor girl died at this time, and we see, she knows what's coming.
Right, I mean, it's 700 and some odd pieces of evidence, but at that moment, it was a reminder of exactly why everybody was here.
Yeah, very much so.
When you summed up to the jury, and the case ultimately went to them, what was their verdict?
It was guilty on all counts.
Daniel Nellis meant nothing to you when you heard it, but it's a name that you would never again forget. When you saw him in person for the first time, what was that like for you?
I don't even think loathing is a strong enough word for it. Just pure evil.
I think he's like a cold-blooded killer. He was stone cold the whole time. It was like he had no emotion at all over his face. And then once they found out he was guilty, he started bawling. And I think it kind of angered me more than it upset me, because he thought he was going to get away with it.
Said he's not crying for her, but for himself.
Yeah.
Daniel Nellis was given the maximum sentence, 25 to life. For taking the life of Michaela MacVilla, the daughter, the sister, who will never return. The thing you miss most about your sister?
We used to have sister talks where we would just talk about random things like our day or whatever we were feeling, what we were scared of.
Do you still talk to her? I know she's not here.
Sometimes. I like to think that when I see butterflies, it's like a gateway to heaven. So whenever I see a butterfly pass, I say, "Hi, Michaela."
And I look at all of this as an honoring of Michaela, of remembering her as Michaela, not just the girl who had a terrible thing happen to her. We've established how good she was and how loved she was.
She was a good person. She was my world.
A lot stands out as I think about this case, like the Fitbit that told us so much, too much, about those last moments of Michaela's life. But rather than think about her heart rate, let's focus on her heart. She loved her family, her cat, the young woman who carried that vibrant purse, how she and her sister made amends with iced coffee and taking those walks. And maybe next time we all see a butterfly, let's think of Michaela